to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Thursday, February 25th, 2016. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Getting on down to the end of the month. Don't forget we get an extra day, the end of this February, because it's leap year. Quick little program note. Apparently, somebody connected with NewsBud was hearing my broadcast yesterday about how I had tried to contact them for information, and Sibel Edmonds got in touch with me earlier today. She is scheduled to be our on-air guest next Tuesday, talking about NewsBud and what it is they're trying to accomplish over there. Lady Claire will be joining us tomorrow in our third hour as well. Phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. Tom is sitting in our control room. We already have a caller on the line, and I guess let's just go ahead and get this phone call. John in Ohio, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, mahalo.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say to you that I thought you have a great show, and I did meet Christine Shepard and her husband when I was in Kona.
Oh, yeah.
Great lady, and she tells it like it is. I think she'll be a very interesting guest.
Yeah, I have not heard back from them. Obviously, following her cancer, they had to sell that beautiful coffee plantation, and I've left messages on her social media pages, but I don't have any other contact information for her at this time.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think if you do get her on, it'd be worthwhile. My question to you is, and this is what's on my mind, there was an individual who, back around the time when you got interested in the fellow there, Vince Foster,
mm-hmm.
He had visited with this man. His name's Leo Wanta. I don't know if you know who he is.
I've heard the name, yes.
It's a very interesting story. It's very, it reads like a spy novel. And supposedly he was able to amass a huge fortune. And the last I heard, he was supposed to get at least $4.5 trillion of the $27.5 trillion that he amassed. And supposedly he was there under the direction of Ronald Reagan. I took it with a grain of salt until I heard a tape that was inadvertently copied on his machine when they called him between Songstead and Sundquist, two politicos, and they sounded like he had the money and they wanted their share of it. So I just know that you seem to be into everything, and you seem to be well versed in all the aspects of what's going on. So I thought I'm going to give you a shout.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm not really into absolutely everything. I'm not into Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. Generally, I try and focus on those things which directly affect the lives of our listeners and readers. And the Leo Wanta story, it's interesting if it's true, but it doesn't really affect me or you, and that's why it has not been given a high priority.
Well, it would, I guess, if he could get that $4.5 trillion. It would mean a lot to the people in the United States, because the income tax they gain from it would certainly help with the debt. And
the government will just go on borrowing that much more. I mean, look at the history of the state lotteries. I'll give you a good example. I was living in California when California passed their lottery, and they were saying this money is going to go to the schools and it will reduce taxation, and they got the lottery, and the first thing the state did was cut education funding by the same amount that was coming from the lottery. So the educational system did not see any gains, and the government just went out and spent that money elsewhere, so we didn't see any tax relief.
Well, I'm not saying that they won't, but I'm just saying it's money there that if they ever became who they're supposed to be, it wouldn't come from us.
And we'll all flap our arms and fly to the moon. Okay, John, thanks an awful lot. And
he's as real as Easter Bunny.
Bye-bye. Okay. Now then, back in the real world. Interesting little article over an Investment Watch blog. And it's pointing out something which has actually been very obvious for a long time. You're hearing about all these major drills. The U.S. and South Korea is drilling here. These people are drilling in the Mediterranean. These others are up in the Black Sea. And they were doing the turn and burn over our house earlier today with some fighter planes. And what we're actually seeing here right now is there are over 36 nations actively rehearsing for World War III. That's how close we are. Everybody thinks it's coming. I had an interesting little discussion with one of our neighbors, and I like to go out and talk to people who don't know about the website or the radio show, just to sort of get the measure of what people are thinking. And, you know, we were just talking about the rush to war, and the gentleman I was talking to was saying, well, the war does seem to be inevitable. And I said, I think we're going to lose this one. And he looked at me and he said, I think you're right. So I'm not the only person who's thinking this very pessimistic forecast. Now, Vladimir Putin has called the King of Saudi Arabia, King Salman, in an effort to basically put the brakes on this reshuffling of the Middle East that could be the trigger for World War III. Now, King Salman does have mental issues. Saudi Arabia is actually being run by the people around him, but Putin, as a head of state, called the other head of state and said, basically saying, you know, there's a ceasefire in Syria and there's no need for any more invasions or attacks. And the reality is here, we need to face up. Russia has won the war in Syria. And it isn't that Russia went in and conquered Syria. All they did was they stopped the U.S. from conquering Syria. And that's a defeat when you realize the agenda of the United States has been, as Wesley Clark blew the whistle on all the way back in 2003, to conquer or regime change or otherwise bring under U.S. domination all of the resource-rich areas of the world and shackle them permanently to the U.S. dollar. And that's an all-or-nothing deal. And if they can't get that, then yeah, the U.S. is losing that. The U.S. government is losing that. More than that, they're losing the war for the minds of the people of planet Earth. Because going into World War I, when the government and the media said the Lusitania wasn't carrying weapons and the German sinking was an atrocious war crime and we had to go punish the Germans for that, the vast majority of people just trusted the government and the media and they went along with it. The same thing going into World War II. When Roosevelt got up there and denounced the dastardly surprise attack by Japan on Pearl Harbor, the vast majority of people trusted the government and the media and said, yes, we will go get Japan. Then were somewhat surprised when they found themselves in Europe fighting Germany, which was Roosevelt's real goal. This time, it's a little bit different. We all know the government and media have been lying about all these wars. Saddam Hussein did not have nuclear weapons of mass destruction. Assad did not have sarin gas and wasn't using chemical weapons on his own supporters. And we understand this ceasefire isn't about ending the conflict in Syria. The U.S. is not going to stop until they get Assad out. The ceasefire is to give ISIS breathing room to regroup and rearm and be supplied by the U.S., and everybody knows this. Remember what I said about Sun Tzu? You have to have a military that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will fight effectively and, if necessary, die. You have to have a civilian population that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will bear the burdens war brings even to the victorious side. The U.S. government has neither of those. And it is extreme folly for the U.S. to continue this war agenda. We are going to lose this one. And along the way, the U.S. will resort to its nuclear arsenal. We're really close. And we all need to stand up and just start saying, enough. No more war. You've lost. Accept it. Let's get back to building up our own country instead of trying to conquer the world. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, this supposed ceasefire that goes into effect midnight tomorrow, Syrian time, it's already a non-starter. The Free Syria Army, backed by the U.S., and 95% of them are not even from Syria, they're all hired mercenaries, has already said they're not going to honor the ceasefire. And Turkey's prime minister is saying the ceasefire is not binding for them. They're going to go on bombing the Kurdish regions, and anybody else they feel they need to. This is just, it's all for show. The U.S. doesn't want peace. They want you to think they're trying to end the conflict. And when something goes wrong, they're going to blame Russia for it. Oh, those gosh darn Russians, they didn't leave and let us have Syria. It's all their fault. Now, John Kerry just made a big mistake relative to our relations to Turkey. As you know, one of the big problems is that Erdogan is opposed to the Kurds. The U.S. and Israeli agenda for the region involves creating a new nation for the Kurds carved out of Syria, Turkey, and Iraq. 5 days ago, the State Department was denying that the U.S. was supplying any weapons to any of the Syrian Kurdish forces in response to complaints from Turkey. Today, John Kerry's out there bragging about how, yes, we're supporting the Syrian Kurds as they strive for independence. And that's one of the reasons why nobody trusts the U.S. government any longer. They're constantly flip-flopping. I mean, they're so messed up. We have U.S. CIA-backed factions in Syria actually fighting against each other. It's ridiculous. Now, Secretary of State Kerry is out there talking about a Plan B if the ceasefire fails, which obviously it's going to. It's designed to fail. It's intended to fail. And the Plan B is we're going to break Syria into two pieces, and we're going to give part of it to the Kurds, and we'll let Assad have the dirt, and our people will have all the oil. But it turns out this is not an original idea with John Kerry. It is, in fact, part of a document, a strategy for Israel in the 1980s written by Oded Yinon, about the establishment of Eretz Israel, the greater Israel, from the Nile to the Euphrates. This is something that Israel has been after since its inception. If you look at the flag of Israel, the blue stripes at the top and bottom represent the Nile and the Euphrates, the promised land of Israel as described in the Old Testament, or the Torah. And that's what they want. And the fact that those lands are already occupied by other people is not really an issue. We just, we'll get rid of them somehow. We'll send them all to Europe or to the United States. We'll empty out Syria of the Syrians, and then it'll be part of Eretz Israel. This is why Israel has never officially drawn their borders. Israel's borders are written in dry erase marker. They don't want to be held to a set of official borders. 60 years, they still have not officially defined their borders. Now, over in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi generals have signed a letter to King Salman and the Saudi government saying in their best professional analysis, invading Syria is going to be a big mistake for Saudi Arabia. And part of that is based on the fact that Saudi Arabia has not been doing very well in Yemen. And against basically farm people. But those farm people are fighting for their own homes. It's one thing to get an army to march into a foreign country and they're there for a paycheck and because they think it's, required by law or religion or whatever. But when you're invading another country, the country being invaded, they've got the home court advantage. They know the territory, they know the land, and they're fighting for their families, their loved ones, their businesses, their history, their culture, all within eyesight. And it's a powerful, powerful, motivating force. It's a major reason why the mighty United States of America was not able to prevail in Third World Vietnam. All the fancy technology and weapons notwithstanding. So the Saudi generals are saying it's a bad idea. Meanwhile, the European Parliament is calling for an embargo against Saudi Arabia for all arms and weapons because Saudi Arabia keeps using banned weapons like cluster bombs on civilians, and the European Parliament is saying it's time to impose an arms embargo against Saudi Arabia. Of course, we know what's going to happen. The U.S. defense contractors will step in, and they'll sell Saudi Arabia everything that Saudi Arabia needs. It's amazing. We're still hearing rumblings about a potential regime change in Ankara. The Turkish people are very unhappy with Erdogan's playing proxy for the U.S. government. Turkey's military are very worried about going up potentially against Russia. And they're very concerned about Erdogan's recent consolidation of power, basically transforming himself into an autocratic ruler. Now, there's an interesting article over in Forbes, Putin's newest satellite state, and they're talking about how Russia and Armenia have signed a mutual defense pact. Now, of course, when the U.S. goes into another country and they sign a defense pact, it's freedom and democracy and, it's expanding American interests. And when Russia does exactly the same thing with a country, it's Russian aggression. It's a military buildup. It's unfolding under the radar. The Russians are beginning to take more of the world. And this is just a continuation of our wars are good, Russia's wars are bad. Our treaties with other countries are good, Russia's treaties with other countries are bad. We're good, Russia's bad. That's all you need to know. Stop thinking if you think the terrorists will win. Now, over in the Western Pacific, off Dataway, the Pentagon is starting a new military buildup in Taiwan. And what they're doing is they're deploying a system called THAAD, the Theater High Altitude Air Defense System. It's a very sophisticated air defense missile. And, of course, Taiwan is very close to China. And China is very upset about this. Now, the reason... we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about how the Pentagon is now establishing a base for the Theater High Altitude Air Defense Rocket System on Taiwan, which is seen as a threat and belligerence by mainland China. The Pentagon is justifying this new system because China's latest generation ballistic missiles have a longer range and greater accuracy and are now able to target existing U.S. bases like Kadena in Japan and even as far away as Guam. Now, the irony of all this is that China got a significant boost in building their long-range rockets and improving their accuracy all the way back during Bill Clinton's re-election campaign and the China-Gate scandal. Because much of that technology, Bill Clinton authorized to transfer to China in exchange for Chinese money coming into his re-election campaign, involved improved staging for multi-stage rockets and improved accuracy of guidance systems. And it was all supposed to be for China's civilian space program, but everybody was saying this is all military application stuff. And so now China has built longer range, more accurate rockets, and so the solution is we're going to take more of your money and we're going to build more overseas bases to threaten China. The U.S. has over 700 bases in foreign countries that you're all paying for. And apparently they're looking at setting up another facility on the island of Tinian, which is famous as the starting point for the nuclear bomb flights into Japan at the end of World War II. Now, for some reason, Army Chief General Mark Milley is pushing for his recommendation that the 425th Airborne Brigade of the U.S. Army remain stationed in Anchorage, Alaska. A lot of people are saying, why do we need an entire Army brigade up there at huge cost? You know, after all, according to Al Gore, the polar bears are all drowning off. They're not a threat anymore. And he's out there basically saying, well, we have to fight Russia. We have to be here in Alaska because Russia's a threat. I mean, after all, you can see Russia from Sarah Palin's doorstep or some such nonsense. It's just a grab for money and power. Military officers do not like to ever say, hey, you know, the threat just isn't that bad because it means budgets get cut. They don't get the toys. They don't get promotions. And everybody understands that ultimately the U.S. wants war with Russia and China. Actually, it's the U.S. Federal Reserve note against the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan. A lot of concern is being raised over the recent United States decision to upgrade its nuclear arsenal. Given that the United States has signed and ratified the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, by the way, so has Russia, so has Iran. Israel didn't. That's another story. And as this agreement is legally binding, it says you're allowed to upgrade and maintain your existing arsenals. Well, apparently the Obama administration is exploiting this loophole. And under the guise of upgrade and improvement and maintenance, they're actually developing much newer, more accurate, more powerful weapons. It's like what the San Onofre nuclear plant did. Oh, we're just doing regular maintenance on the heat exchangers, and instead they put in a larger, more powerful system, which unfortunately didn't last. But this article that came out of Sputnik News is saying this is nuclear escalation by the U.S. It's not maintaining the current arsenal. They're basically building whole new systems. And we're going to be a little bit nervous here in Hawaii because apparently there's a decision underway in the face of North Korea's aggression. As you know, over on the island of Kauai, which is out that way, there's an area called Barking Sands. And it's a public beach, but it's also home to the Pacific Missile Test Facility. And if you live on Kauai and you don't have anything more entertaining to do, you can go on down and watch the rockets lift off. In combination with the radar system at above the Kalalau Valley, Koke Point, I think it is. Yeah, it's Koke Point. They actually did some of the early testing on the Aegis CEC system. Now, the U.S. government has managed to barter some of the land down on Ni'ihau, the Forbidden Island, which is owned by the Johnson family. They're land rich and cash poor, so they waived some taxes and said, we're going to start launching missiles off the Forbidden Island because that way we can do things that people can't see. And they have been using the facility. They've developed the facility to sort of be an Aegis cruiser on the ground. Now, this is very different from the cruiser in the cornfields that were being used to test Aegis CEC off of New York prior to the downing of TWA 800. These are actual facilities with rockets that can be launched, and they're on the ground. It's a ground-based standard missile system, and they've built the facilities out there to test it, and it was supposed to be a test facility. But now, as friction with North Korea starts to escalate, there's talk of just making that an operational missile site, which would, of course, make Kauai a first strike target in the event of war with Russia or China. That's got to be making our Kauaians very, very, very nervous. Interestingly enough, we used to have, during the height of the Cold War, a Nike missile site right here on Oahu. It was over there toward above where the ocean park, the water park is now. But that was decommissioned. But they're starting to rattle the sabers and put the rockets out there. All right, let's talk about the candidates and the campaign for the White House. The latest polls coming out of Florida have Trump at 44, Rubio at 28 in his home state. Trump is clobbering Marco Rubio in Marco Rubio's home state. He was born in Miami. And everybody is starting to panic about Donald Trump. He's not one of them. He's not one of the political elites. He's an outsider. He's going to spoil the party. And the globalists are all terrified because Donald Trump clearly has a very nationalistic view of the United States of America. He wants America to be great again, not part of a global empire, not part of the New World Order, not part of the North American Union. He's a threat to that global agenda. And they're in full panic mode right now after his win in Nevada. He is winning by enough of a margin to prevent a brokered convention, which is their last-ditch attempt to kick Trump out and say, well, he won the popular vote, but we have decided he can't win and he's not good for the nation, and you Americans, you're all too stupid to choose your own leaders, so we're going to give you Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush or somebody that Hillary can steamroller over. And it's amazing when you're looking at the articles in the corporate media, like this one here, Cruz and Rubio must take down Trump at tonight's debate. And they're not even concerned about how it looks, where they're out there saying, we have decided Trump has to go. We don't care if you want him. It is not up to you anymore. In fact, I got into a discussion on a corporate media chat room where somebody came up and said, well, we the people stuff, you're all too stupid to know what a bad deal Trump is. And talk about arrogance, where the party elite and the corporate media think they know better what's best for you. That's not democracy. More when we get back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about how the party elites and the corporate media are not even concealing the fact that they want Trump out. And I think they're actually bolstering Trump's support because the American people are sick and tired of this attitude professed by the corporate media and the party insiders that we're all too stupid to know what's best for the country, and we should just sit back and let them decide the rulers for us. Now, that's not what the United States is supposed to be. One person, one vote. We choose our own candidates. We decide which candidate gets the office. That's the way the country was set up. If you don't like that system, if you want to live in a country where the party machine simply tells you who your rulers are going to be, move somewhere else, because you are a poor excuse for an American. So we're seeing all these articles out here, new Republican plan to destroy Trump. Clinton Democrats turn a nervous eye to Trump after his Nevada blowout. It's almost like they're not even talking about the issues anymore. It's get Trump. We've got to get Trump. He's an outsider. He'll spoil the party for the rest of us. He's got his own money. He can't be bought. He can't be owned. He's a danger. He might actually try and do a good job for the American people, like John Kennedy. We sure took care of that, didn't we? All right, let's grab a couple of phone calls. Terry in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I can't tell you how disappointed I was with the news that Donald Trump wanted to boycott Apple Computer because of the refusal to open up cell phones to the New World Order.
Yeah, it's one of the things I disagree with Trump on. And, I don't agree with everything Trump says. But there's one thing whatever Trump says, whether you agree with it or not, it's his honest opinion. And that's something you're not going to get from any of the other candidates. I mean, look at the way Cruz is now flip-flopping on the immigration issue.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good thing. I mean, that's a good point because nobody came out against Donald Trump and said, hey, we support Apple Computer, did they?
No, not yet. They haven't. But
yeah, so they're in the same, everybody's in the same boat as far as that goes.
Yeah, so that's kind of a push. It's like, support for Israel. All the candidates are in favor of it, so that's a push. Let's focus on the point of differences. The big point of difference, of course, is, Donald Trump is an outsider. He wants to be president of the United States, and yes, his ego's tangled up in it, but he's going to want to look good in the history books. And
he did look good when he made that statement. And I also read where he wanted to bring back part of the Patriot Act and even talk about shutting down part of the Internet.
Well, but he also wants to secure our border. And again, I don't agree with everything that Trump says, but it's his real opinion. On that issue alone, Trump's got the advantage. All of these other establishment politicians, the career politicians, they're habitual liars because that's what politicians are. Trump comes out of the world of business where your word is your bond, and you're only as good as your word. That counterparty trust. If you get a reputation of not keeping your word, you do not stay in business. And so he's a very different kind of person, and that's why I want to support him. Anyway, thank you for the call, Terry. We're going to let you go and switch to Wayne in Pennsylvania. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Nice to hear you and see you on the computer here. I run across a couple stories about a litigation attorney going through what constitutes someone being called a United States national-born citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And this attorney comes up and says that neither one of them, Cruz or Rubio, qualified to run for the president of the United States because the male part of their family was not born in the U.S. And according to her interpretation of what they call a recitation, I'll find that here real quick, it's a dissertation of the manner in acquiring character and privileges of the citizen of the United States. And she goes through this about 15 minutes, what the founding fathers in the beginning, and actually describes what a natural-born citizen is. And according to her, neither one of them qualified because their male parent was not born in this country. Okay.
Well, I mean, the fact that Cruz is not constitutionally eligible to be president, that's an open and shut case on several issues. His being born in Canada, his mother having renounced her U.S. citizenship in order to be a Canadian citizen, that's a dead issue. On Rubio's side, I'll have to look at this dissertation because looking at the Constitution itself and the document that was authored by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court explaining why natural born was put in there, I'm a little less sure about the father's parentage being an issue because if you remember back when the Constitution was being written, the vast majority of those people were first generation. They were first generation. Hello? Let me talk.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
They were first generation. They were themselves the children of people who had not been born in the United States of America. And so, that may be...
According to her, they were the only ones allowed to do that. Everybody after them had to be born. Their parents had to be natural-born citizens. It didn't matter where the child was born whatsoever, according to her dissertation of that particular article.
Okay, well, on that issue, she's absolutely...
Get you the information.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead, man.
How do I email it to you? I don't have an email address.
Okay, well, it's right there at the top of the website. Email to WhatReallyHappened.com, and the email address is WRH@WhatReallyHappened.com, and I'll take an honest look at it. But the location where you are born is a critical issue. That's what natural born means. It was defined that way in the laws of the day and legal precedent. And again, the comments by the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court said the goal is that the military might of the United States never be under the control of somebody not born in this land. So on that point, this lawyer is definitely wrong. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Have a good day.
All right, thank you. I'll take a look at it. This could just be an attempt to muddy the issue. To say, well, there's different opinions, and until we sort out the exact meaning, there's no reason to take Cruz out of the race. We know that there are now at least 6 lawsuits against Ted Cruz, challenging his constitutional eligibility to be president or vice president. And the only way he can get around that is to deliberately confuse the issue and say, well, we're going to have to let the courts sort it out. And it sounds to me like this litigation expert is coming on out trying to say, well, it's not really settled. Yeah, it's settled. And I wrote an article about it. And again, like the late Judge Scalia, I look at what the intention of the Founding Fathers was in terms of interpreting the Constitution. And I think that's a good guide right there. The Constitution is not meant to be twisted and altered and reinterpreted and reimagined to serve private interests further on down the road. Okay, anyway, we're talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about the Hillary campaign. Hillary's campaign is nervous. Donald Trump was the one Republican they did not wish to run against. And there is so much fear over Donald Trump that major Republican donors are now donating to Hillary Clinton's campaign because it looks like it's going to come down to Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump unless Hillary gets arrested or somebody shoots at Donald Trump. And there's an alarming number of people already joking and hedging about that. So when the GOP donors are supporting Hillary Clinton, you know that's a measure of how terrified they are of Donald Trump, that he's going to come on in and spoil their little party. He's going to get into the White House, he's going to take a look at all the inside information and say, wow, they really messed this up. And they did. Latest word from Michael Bloomberg is he's ready to be Hillary's vice president and running mate. And I'm sure Bernie Sanders is out there saying, hey, that's my job. That's why I didn't challenge the validity of Iowa and New Hampshire, despite videotaped evidence of fraud. That's why I didn't bring up the email thing. I get to be her vice president. That's actually going to be a very important slot. Normally, the vice presidency is, as John Adams put it, the most boring job in government. But Hillary's health isn't good. There's a real possibility that were she to somehow steal the White House, she might serve for a year just so that she could be in the history books as the U.S. first woman president, and then she might be forced to step down by what appear to be some serious medical issues. So whoever's in that VP slot, they're out there saying, how you feeling today, Hillary? How you feeling? That cough's getting really bad here. Here, can you see? How many fingers am I holding up? So, presidential health is a vice presidential obsession here. So Bloomberg's out there throwing his hat in the ring. He wants to be Hillary's vice president. And I'm pretty sure Sanders wanted that slot. We'll be right back after news and commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. We've got a couple of callers already waiting on the line. Going to ask you to be patient because before we take the calls, I feel I need to respond to the story about Apple that we just heard on the news break, especially because it timed out with that other caller talking about Apple. And did you notice the statement coming from the government spokesperson? They're reacting to the public pressure on this issue. He's out there saying, we're not trying to set a precedent. We're not trying to gain access to all your phones. It's just this one phone, just this one time, and it's so important for us to find this evidence. Okay. Why are you looking for evidence? If you claim you have already solved this crime, and the 2 suspects are dead and will never stand trial. Kind of makes you wonder why they would even care if there's anything on this phone. Especially because this wasn't a personal telephone of the suspects. The phone in question is a government-issued work phone, subject to consent to monitoring. It's not a secret terrorist communication device. The personal phones of the suspects have been destroyed. They're not being protected by Apple. Now, the FBI already has all of the Patsy's communications records, who they talk to and how, from the service providers. They don't need the phone for that. The FBI received all the backups of the data on that phone until just 5 weeks before the false flag. Copies of the Patsy's contacts with their co-workers, which is what the FBI says they're after, are already available in duplicate from the co-workers' phones. So this idea that they have to get into this one phone, that they can't solve the case without it, is absolute, complete, utter nonsense. And that means that, yes, their denials notwithstanding, they're trying to establish a precedent. This is a war on personal privacy. It's a war on your privacy. No, they're not going to bother with warrants once they have this tool. Now, from the technological side, a lot of people don't understand exactly what the FBI is asking for. On the iPhone, every time you try and enter your personal code, there is a built-in delay until it comes back and tells you that you were wrong. And that makes it very time-consuming to just trial and error numbers. The other part is that you can set an option in your iPhone so that if there are 10 wrong passcodes entered in a row, the phone will erase itself. Now, what the FBI wants is for Apple to create a version of their operating system that takes out the self-destruct feature and eliminates the delay between tries so that they can plug the iPhone into a computer and just have the computer try all the possible passcodes in a very quick time to break into it. Because without the personal passcode, they can't break the encryption. because that passcode is blended with the encryption key. That's what the FBI wants. And once they get that tool, they'll be able to break into anybody's iPhone they want at any time. And that's why Apple is taking a stand on this. And it all comes down to the fact that we, the American people, cannot, dare not, trust this government with any more intrusions into our private life, because the government has demonstrated time and time and time again they cannot be trusted. They don't feel they have to play by the rules. And again, real criminals and real terrorists are always going to be able to defeat the NSA. We proved that with our encryption challenges. This is about watching you. This is about stealing your business secrets. Making sure you're not thinking the double plus ungood thoughts. All right, we're going to grab a couple of phone calls here. Ivan in Ohio, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just, you cracked me up. I could just picture your eyes rolling as you're like, when you were talking about the news. Anyway, I was wanting to ask you, okay, recently I lost my phone and I have an Android and it just resets. It reset and did all that. I installed Firefox on this stupid thing, and I go to Outlook several times, and I keep getting bad gateways using the Firefox browser. Well, then I try it on my Android browser. Works fine, boots right up. So I was just, do you think Microsoft is playing games, or what do you think's going on here?
Well, what I think is going on is as the economy tightens, all of these companies that are producing these products are trimming their software staff. They've completely let their quality assurance testers go. They're putting out flaky products and they're letting you do the testing for them, and you'll hopefully send back reports saying this thing is broken. The reality is most people don't bother. And there's a lot of sloppy code out there, especially in the online advertising. They're just rushing to get these things out. They're writing in JavaScript. They're following very sloppy code writing techniques. They dump all the variables into globals. So if you've got, because Java is a single instance running on your system, if you've got two Java scripts or compiled Java that have an identically named global value, it's going to crash and cause all kinds of problems.
Okay.
That's poor quality. Plus, of course, add on top of that, you've got all these nefarious people out there that the NSA doesn't seem interested in finding, who are out there hacking away at our systems. And my advice to all of you is, the smartphones are great, tablets are great. Don't keep your personal information on them. And I know the people who are trying to ban cash are saying, your smartphone will be your wallet. No, it won't. Because of the fact that it's wide open. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I tell my wife that. Watch what you're writing on there. Watch what you're putting on that phone.
Yeah.
That's why I don't use those apps. Because it all creates a cache, does it not?
Well, the Android platform, unfortunately, is very weak. And the reason Apple is digging in its heels is they have invested a huge amount of time and money on that issue of privacy. People buy the Apple products. They spend more for those products because there is a certain degree of privacy and security built in. And if Apple just goes along with what the FBI wants, it's only a matter of time before cyber criminals have it or figure out how to make it happen. And Apple might as well, go start filing for bankruptcy right now. It's that serious. And I don't blame them for digging in their heels. And again, as I pointed out a little while ago, there really isn't a genuine need for the FBI to get into this one particular telephone. This is merely the tool there. It's terrorism. Terrorism going on. We're saving your schools and your houses from terrorism. No, you're not. We've had terror attacks. You haven't actually stopped any in all these years of NSA spying on us all. Didn't stop Paris, did you?
Didn't stop anything.
No, it's a big waste of time and money.
And all the time this was happening, I was listening to Coast to Coast the other night, and Nori gets on there and he says, Microsoft was backing the FBI now? And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, that's it. I was really, that really just, I was like, I couldn't believe it. Because I don't read.
Okay, we're unfortunately, Ivan, I'm sorry, we're going to have to cut you off. We got a bunch of other callers waiting I need to get to. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the call, and we'll be right back. And yeah, Bill Gates is trying to back away now from his admission that they have had backdoors for the government in Windows going back to the 1990s. Too late, Bill. It's out on the net. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to try and get through some of these phone calls here right now. Stephen in Kentucky, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Steve, are you there? Okay, we're going to put Steve on hold, and we're going to go to Charlie in Kentucky. Aloha, Charlie. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Hello? Okay, well, we seem to have some... I can hear you now. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so on the Apple situation, it strikes me, immediately it struck me as some kind of clever marketing stunt on Apple's part, but as it's developed, it starts to look more like theater build up toward legislation to grant them some sort of immunity from liability when they continue to access these phones for information in the future.
I don't know that there'd be a liability issue in the first part because this isn't a failing or a negligence on Apple's part. I really think this is about trying to convince the American people that, if you demand privacy in your life, that somehow this is going to help the terrorists win.
Well, they have committed, in the marketing of their product that it wasn't crackable or, it was encrypted. You couldn't get into it. Law enforcement couldn't get into it. Nobody could get into it. I don't think, Apple as a large corporation has any problem working with the government if they don't want to assume the liability that could come from, not having some sort of immunity granted to them, which might.
Well, I have to disagree with that because, if Apple eventually knuckles under to the U.S. government openly, publicly, their sales are going to suffer. People are going to say, well, if the privacy isn't there, I'm going to go get the much less expensive Android device. And so Apple is looking to lose a huge amount of money. Now, there could be another issue where Apple is going to unlock the phone, the iPhone for the government, but they're all going to pretend that Apple stood its ground so that we'll all use Apple thinking that we have our privacy. Look how long the government was spying on us all while telling us you had privacy, you had privacy, you had privacy. Now we know that was a complete illusion. The spying by the government on law-abiding Americans without warrants goes all the way back to the 1980s in a program called Echelon. And, ultimately, when you are a paranoid nation-state afraid of its own people, they will not allow anything to be outside of their inspection. And again, this is not going to stop criminals. It's not going to stop terrorists because real criminals and real terrorists write their own systems of encryption. It's actually very easy to do. Anyway, listen, I need to let you go. I've got another call I need to get to right now. John in Barbados, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Yes, I'm going back to this situation in the Middle East. I've just got some information that Saudi, Qatari, and the UAE have ordered their citizens to leave Lebanon.
Yes, and some other countries are recalling their diplomats as well. And what it signals to me is that the U.S. and its cohorts may be putting Syria on hold, and they're going to go after Lebanon, or they're going to let Israel go after Lebanon and support Israel, because Israel still wants that Litani River. And then once Lebanon is firmly under control of the U.S. clique, if you will, then they're going to go back to Syria again. And then once they get Syria, they'll be into Iran. And the only thing standing in the way of Russia's conquest of the entire planet is Russia and China. And inevitably, as the U.S. pursues this war agenda, we're going to be in a world war with those nations. And the only question is going to be how long Russia and China will wait, how close will they let the U.S. get to their borders before they decide they need to act in self-defense.
Well, I'm looking at other items as well, like the deployment of the Black Sea Fleet all the way along the northern coast of Turkey. the build-up of Russian equipment and what have you in Armenia. And this is another. I mean, Kaliningrad as well. They built up their military in Kaliningrad, that little enclave almost in the Central Europe. And what I noticed over the last few days, the Yemenis have destroyed one military base, killing 50 and injuring hundreds, and virtually completely destroying the base with an Iranian Qassam missile. How they managed to get that into Yemen is another story, but obviously they've got access now to these modern weapons.
The Qassam is not a modern weapon. The Qassam is that's a homebrew. The Qassam missile, that's what the Gazans manufacture to shoot into Israel. It's not very accurate, which is why it spirals across the sky, which is why the Iron Dome can't actually hit it.
Yeah, but apparently it destroyed one base and killed 50 people and injured hundreds.
Oh, the Yemenis are doing very well against Saudi Arabia. They just sank the 10th Saudi warship. Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Now, one more clue is, as a caller mentioned earlier in the week, History Channel, Smithsonian are just constantly pounding all of the historical documentaries about the Holocaust and Hitler and Nazis. And we're seeing, again, all the World War II movies are all over the movie channels on the cable TV here. And that's why I think that Israel is going to stage some kind of a false flag. Oh, Hezbollah has attacked us, and they're going to go into Lebanon and just smash Lebanon, and then they're going to turn back and say, all right, we've now got a more secure position from which to project power into Syria, even with the Russians coming in on the other side. I think that's the plan, and that's why all of these countries are telling their nationals to get out. Other countries are pulling their diplomats out. Something big is getting ready to happen in Lebanon.
The other thing I wanted to mention is this kerfuffle between China and the U.S. over the installation of the THAAD system, which is entirely useless against the Sunburn cruise missile or the KOS or the Hoot.
Well, as the Pentagon stated, their concern was China's latest generation ballistic missiles, the ones that were made more accurate and reliable by that technology that was transferred to them by Bill Clinton. And those missiles can now reach places like Guam and Kadena, and that's why they want to have that theater high-altitude air defense system in place.
I think they can reach the west coast of America, too, but...
No, I don't think so. They can probably reach up to Alaska and possibly here in Hawaii. I don't think the Chinese missiles can hit the west coast of the U.S. with any degree of accuracy. I could be wrong, but that's my read of the situation right now.
If they can land something on the moon, they can hit anywhere.
Well, that's a completely different set of rocket technology. I mean, they're not using the same rocket to hit both of those. Anyway, listen, John, thanks for the phone call. We need to let you go here. We're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with the campaign and the candidates. We got a lot of stuff to cover before the end of the show. Well, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the campaign for the White House. We're talking about Donald Trump. He's leading Marco Rubio by roughly 20 points in Rubio's home state, doing the same thing to Ted Cruz in, well, pretty much everywhere else at this point. Now, there's an interesting little story came out of Daily Caller, a political science professor who claims he has a statistical model that correctly predicted the results of every election going back for 104 years based on early voting data, final results. Has basically said the odds of Donald Trump becoming America's next president currently range from between 97% to 99%, barring the unexpected, of course. Now, I've noticed all over the corporate media today that they're trying to make a big deal about something in Donald Trump's tax returns. He's got to release his tax returns. You know, good information. There's a bombshell in there. And they're going to go after there and show that, you know, Donald Trump doesn't like to pay taxes any more than anybody else. This could actually backfire. And I'll tell you why. Donald Trump's popularity is basically the result of Americans being sick and tired of the government as a whole. And that includes taxes. Look at all these commercials all over the place for tax resolution services. That tells you how many Americans are struggling with the current tax burden, and all of the career establishment politicians are saying, well, we got to raise taxes even more, got to keep the bankers happy. If the bankers cry, the world will come to an end. And so the same anti-government feeling that is powering Trump's support is also an anti-tax feeling. And if they make a big stink about this, Americans are going to start wondering, well, you know, the taxes are too high. And we're not even sure if they're legal, remember? A lot of Americans are now aware that 16th Amendment was never ratified. The U.S. Supreme Court in Stanton versus Baltic Mining said the 16th Amendment did not actually grant the U.S. government any new taxing authority. And in the original Constitution, a direct, non-apportioned tax was explicitly banned. They're going to make a big stink about this. This could backfire. This could blow up in their faces. People are going to look at Donald Trump and say, yeah, so he saved his taxes someplace. We're all taxed way too much. So that huge number of commercials that you're being subjected to, we can solve your problems with the IRS. That tells you how out of control that whole situation is. That's part of the anger powering Trump's popularity. And again, we're starting to see some very alarming rhetoric coming on out. Apparently at one of the pro-Hillary rallies being run by Bill Clinton, they're trying to double their reach. You know, you couldn't get Hillary here, but you get to talk to Bill. There, Bill Clinton's coming on over here. And apparently U.S. congressman making a speech to the crowd literally used the words, Hillary is going to kill Donald Trump. Now, it's a rather poor choice of words. Maybe it's a Freudian slip. I'm sure many of Hillary's supporters and the GOP leadership and the money junkies are thinking along those lines. There's an article over at Tomato Bubble pointing out how Esquire seems to be dropping hints that the only way Donald Trump can be stopped is if something untoward happens. Needless to say, the article in the Esquire is anti-Trump. Oh, they hate him. They absolutely hate him. And again, getting on back to what I was saying in the first hour, the arrogance on display that these people who are basically paid to lie to you think they know what's better for the country than you, the American people. They think it should be their job to say, these are your potential rulers. You're not allowed to have your own candidates, not allowed to have a Ron Paul. We can't have a Ron Paul. Can't have a Cynthia McKinney, can't have a Donald Trump. We will decide for you because you're all such idiots. You are all clueless morons who really shouldn't be entrusted with running such a great nation. We will pick the leaders for you, and your job is to vote for the people we have chosen. Give us your money and breed us new workers and soldiers for the coming World War. That's your place. That's your job. If you're not angry over being treated like that, there's something wrong with you. Even over the New York Times, the columnist Ron Dothat was joking about an assassination of Donald Trump. He said, this is how Trump's campaign will end. Now he's pulled it back and apologized. Isn't it kind of telling how many people in the establishment media and the party machines are joking about this already? Article out of the National Review. The time has come to heap scorn and mockery on Trump. Actually, that's kind of what they've been doing all along. Now, call me old-fashioned, but I seem to recall the way this nation is supposed to be run is that we, the people, choose our own leaders. Not the media, not Wall Street, and not the party machines. All these people attacking Trump because he's not part of their establishment are basically proclaiming that they don't believe in the democratic process, that they think they should be able to simply tell us who the rulers will be. And we should just accept that. I don't think so. It's not the way the country was set up. If we, the people, are not allowed to select our own leaders, then the government is neither constitutional, legal, or legitimate. And hence, we are under no moral obligation to obey an illegitimate, illegal government, certainly not to pay its bills, or sacrifice the lives of our children in said government's obsession with wars of conquest. And that's not even getting into the issue of election fraud, because fraud negates consent. There are hundreds of court cases that firmly establish that precedent. If there is fraud involved in any agreement or process, the consent of the parties is nullified. Keep that in mind, because we're going to hit that one a little bit later in the show. Okay, now then, getting on down here, I'm going to skip this stuff. There's a new development in the sordid tale of Hillary's email server. It is now coming out that many of Hillary Clinton's unclassified emails on her private, unsecure server contained sections copied out of classified documents. And by the way, that's also a violation of Title 18, to take content from a classified document, copy it to a non-classified document. That's an overt act. It's not an accident. Somebody copied material from classified documents and walked it over to Hillary's server. It's amazing. Now, Judicial Watch is coming on back here, and they're looking at some new pages. Judicial Watch just released 246 pages of previously undisclosed documents from the Office of Independent Counsel during the Whitewater investigation. And Judicial Watch is saying it's important to look at this because it establishes the prior patterns of corruption of the Clintons, including Hillary herself. And we need to be looking at that. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, over in Bernie Sanders' camp, the news is all good. He is pulling ahead of Hillary Clinton. And right now, according to the latest Reuters poll, he is 6 points up nationally over Hillary Clinton. Now, of course, Hillary Clinton is out there saying, I don't care what the people are voting. I've got the superdelegates, and the superdelegates are going to make me the Democratic nominee. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. When Hillary steals the nomination and basically tells the Democratic voters, to heck with you, the Democratic voters who were going to support Bernie Sanders are going to defect to whoever's running as the GOP nominee. They're not going to just jump onto Hillary's campaign after that kind of disrespect. They're really not thinking very clearly. Meanwhile, Jeb Bush has had a conference call with all of his top donors to apologize of how truly sorry he is. He let them all down, $130 million. Gee whiz. Boy, what you could have done with $130 million. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Andrea in Oklahoma. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, aloha. We're all sitting on our hands wanting to do something, but we're keeping our hands and we're grinding our teeth. We're very angry at the government. If they were to pull off something, I think, if something happened to Donald Trump, anything, poisoning or anything, and it seems as though they have this, his name's Larry Eldon, ELGEL.
Mm-hmm.
He has on YouTube 9 U.S. presidents that were assassinated by globalists, and I think it's worth everybody taking a look at.
Mm-hmm.
But in there, he gives an example about Alexander Hamilton. He went out on a gentleman's duel, and it was custom that they would fire in the air, but Aaron Burr evidently chose to not fire in the air and shot and killed Alexander Hamilton. And opened up Chase Manhattan, and he just breaks it down to all these presidents that were, once they were,
well, we cover a lot of that same territory. We cover a lot of the same material in my article, All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, and I've gotten a few emails from people reading it that, first of all, had forgotten how many American presidents have been assassinated and how all of them seem to be tied into this issue about whether this nation should be enslaved to a private central bank or not. And it is. It's a common feature. And, you know, Trump's already out there saying he wants to audit the Fed. He wants to investigate and prosecute the Clintons for their corruption, all things that really should be done. But if you look at that video where Donald Trump crashes Glenn Beck's little love fest for, I think it was Ted Cruz, you can see very clearly that Donald Trump is, in fact, wearing a very heavy bulletproof vest, and well, he should. And I'm expecting somebody to try and kill him, take him out. Everybody's talking about that. And I'm in agreement with you. That might be the last straw. Because as John F. Kennedy said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And I remember there's a great line from the first Godfather movie where they're trying to end this war, and Don Corleone gets up there and says, you know, I'm glad we made the peace here today, but I just want to make a comment about my surviving son here. If anything should happen to him, if he should be shot, if he should be run over, if he should be struck by lightning, I'm going to burn the people in this room. Basically saying that there will be no excuses. However it happens, if it happens, bad things are going to happen. And at this point, it would be extraordinarily reckless for somebody to assassinate Donald Trump when we out here are fully expecting it to happen and are not going to believe a story about a crazed lone nut assassin registered trademark Central Intelligence Agency.
Yes, and the thing is, when there have been riots and stuff, they seem like they hold back. But the thing is, just this quote on Nathan Meyer Rothschild's he was saying that whoever owns the money for England will
what he said. Well, let me give you the quote. What he said. You know, let me control and issue a nation's money, and I care not who makes the laws. Okay?
Because they're the puppet, and he runs the puppet. And
yes, they do. They do. The private central bankers have played this fraud on the people of planet Earth for 300 years. It has made them insanely wealthy on our backs, and it's time for it to come to an end. It really is. All right, Andrea, I need...
bully is never going to stop. They're only going to get worse. And we haven't stopped them yet, and they've gotten worse and worse and worse, and they won't stop until we jump up and do something.
Well, I'm working as hard as I can here. I mean, I don't encourage violent revolution, but here's what's going on. And this is the victory of the independent media. For 300 years, the private central bankers did what they did out of view of ordinary people. We've taken that away from them. We've turned the rock over. Everybody sees what's crawling underneath it. We've taken away the government's ability to lie to us all with impunity. We've taken away the corporate media's ability to lie to us with impunity. And both corporate media and the private central bankers and government are starting to build up serious credibility deficits. And I'm still convinced that in the very near future, we're going to see the U.S. federal government tear itself apart the way the former Soviet Union did. And we're going to have to be ready to take care of each other for a couple of months, maybe 4 or 5 months. It's going to be really rough while we build a whole new nation that is once again dedicated to the care of the nation and its people, not to the money junkies. Rule number 1, no more private central banks. Rule number 2, no more private central banks. Rule number 3, no more private central banks, and we'll work out the rest of the details later. Andre, I need to let you go. We got a bunch more calls I want to get to before the top of the hour, so we're going to switch over to Keith in Montana. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I got 2 things for you, Mike. Actually, 2.5. I had a kind of a weird dream the other night there of this millions of protesters with holding their little cards up in the air like that, but they were absolutely blank. No political message, nothing like that. It's just like, what would they do for the cops? I mean, what would their response be?
I don't know. Ban blank cards. I mean, looking at the way they're going on encryption.
Millions of people sitting around holding up blank cards.
Yeah.
You think they get the message? It reminds me of Nixon during the Vietnam War there, where they had lined those buses up around the White House, where Nixon in there clenching his knuckles saying they're going to kill us, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, the other thing, I know you've highlighted this a lot there, but until people actually watch the two videos on YouTube, the shock doctrine, or sometimes it's called shock treatment, they keep taking it down for some reason. And that was the Milton Friedman plan. And also John Pilger's War on Democracy.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch those two very carefully, you'll see that what was being done in Venezuela, Bolivia and stuff, and now in the Middle East, is also being done here.
Yes.
It's part of the shock doctrine. And it's with the millions of unemployed that it's screwing up the laborers, getting rid of the civil rights leaders. You know, that is the whole premise like that. And like Iraq or any other stuff, the first thing they do is they go in there, they bomb all infrastructure. And it's just like the days of Germany where they destroyed all infrastructure. They bombed the cities, power, water, sewer. And that's what we're seeing here. It's part of the shock doctrine.
Shock and awe.
So it's shock and awe, yeah.
Okay.
All right, that was it. Milo says bark. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, fine. Give Milo a good ear rubbing from me. We're going to switch over here to Anthony in Canada. We've got barely a minute and a half. What's on your mind?
Quickly, you know, with Erdogan, the way he's acting now, I never thought somebody would surpass Netanyahu for Psychopath of the Year, but I guess after about 20 years, somebody's finally done it. So it's interesting to see how he's acting. One offshoot about the election. I know it's old news right now. You know, I guess Rand Paul, you know, he got knocked out of the election. I guess going and bowling behind the Wailing Wall in Israel didn't get him that far this election. So I guess that wasn't a payoff for him. The main point I wanted to make is there was a news on INFOWARS last week. It seems like you're the only ones talking about the possibility of Pakistan giving nuclear weapons to Saudi Arabia. And I'm going, you know what, if this is even somewhat true, why isn't everybody going crazy about it?
We talked about it early. We talked about it earlier in the week. Saudi Arabia financed Pakistan's nuclear weapons program, and the condition of that was Pakistan has to give Saudi Arabia nuclear weapons if asked, and that seems to be what's happening. Thanks for the call. We need to let you go, take a break for commercials and news, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. I want to step on back to the very strange circumstances surrounding the death of Judge Scalia. And certainly the way it was being handled, the rush to get his body into the ground, no autopsy, no investigation, just take our word for it. He just died peacefully of a coronary lying in perfect repose in his bed. And there's an interesting article coming out of the Seattle Times where they're pointing out that there was one more thing very odd about the room in which Scalia was found. And it has to do with what's called a CPAP machine. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, there is a condition called sleep apnea. It affects about 20 million Americans. My wife Claire is one of them. And for the more serious cases, it can be life-threatening. And so they have this breathing apparatus that you put on when you're going to lie down and go to sleep. You never, ever go to bed without it. In the case of Judge Scalia, the CPAP machine was on the nightstand next to him, but it was not turned on. It was not plugged in. Scalia was not wearing the mask. And that is another indicator that the official story of the judge's demise is about as honest and truthful as the claim that Saddam had nuclear weapons. The wet work has already begun this season, as it were. And boy, I remember in the 60s, I mean, where people were just being assassinated left and right. Are we going back into that? John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, the attempt on Wallace. Very dark times, and it's starting to feel like we're repeating it. All right, let's talk a little bit about the economy. And we're seeing an article over in Zero Hedge. Even the average Joe gets it. They're winding us all up for a Minsky moment. And basically sifting through all the commentary and analysis, what it basically comes down to is The bankers have run out of ideas to keep this system going. That 11th marble has become a major, major problem. And there isn't anything they can do about it without admitting that the 11th marble, private central banking, has been a scam all along. That there was never, ever a way to get out of debt once you were put into it. Now, Deutsche Bank is still giving off warning signs. Some experts are saying technically it's already insolvent, and they're just trying to pretend it isn't so. Wishful thinking. According to Morgan Stanley, the biggest threat to Deutsche Bank's survival is those German people can't be forced to put their money in to save the bank. And again, that betrays an attitude that we are seeing from government and the corporate media, that you are not important compared to the banks. That you and your wallet and your wealth are fair game. We've got to keep the most holy church of private central banking going until somebody else takes the fall for the collapse. And that's the problem. It has to collapse. Inevitably, it has to collapse. So you, especially as you hear this argument about banning cash, you have one of two choices. You can let yourself get sucked down to destruction by the private central banks, or you can stop throwing good money after bad and take steps to isolate and protect what little remains of your wealth. Those are the only two choices that you have. Apparently, over in Detroit, teachers are facing the possibility of not being paid. The Detroit schools are running out of money. The board is issuing another $700 million in bonds at a usurious interest rate of 8%. That's why they're in trouble. They keep going further into debt, and they're having to serve the interest, and they've got nothing left over for the school. But, of course, there's all this money being sent in all across America for white privilege training. Oh, yes, plenty of funding to teach people about white privilege and why it's bad. Can anybody tell me here what kind of a job anybody's going to get getting out of school after studying white privilege? Is there a white privilege shopping center someplace that they're going to get a job? Is there a white privilege tire center or a bakery? Our kids' heads are being filled with useless junk. They are not being given the skills to be able to compete in a modern global technological marketplace. That's one of the reasons why all these corporations are abusing the H-1B visas to bring in young people from other countries where they've actually had a real education and know how to make stuff work. More countries are turning to their own currencies and dropping the use of the dollar. It's like the Chinese water torture. Drip, 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 drip. China, Brazil, India, back. One at a time. Dick Smith is going to close all of their stores. They're going out of business. 3,000 staff to be let go. Kohl's has announced they're going to close 18 underperforming stores. The location's not yet announced. Now, there's one good piece of news out of this oil price war against Russia. North Dakota's largest oil producer has suspended all fracking activity, which is good news for the people of North Dakota after what they've been seeing over there in Oklahoma. Now, we're also seeing in the corporate media a huge amount of propaganda against physical silver and gold, mostly gold, including a lot of top so-called economic experts are out there saying, well, gold doesn't increase in value, it just sits there, it doesn't do anything. You don't want gold. We're hearing it certainly from Goldman Sachs. Lloyd Blankfein is out there. We're seeing all these articles. Even Harry Dent is saying, yeah, really, you shouldn't bother. Well, what do you want to trust? Something that's physical and tangible that is historically proven to hold value? Or do you want to trust ink and paper and numbers in a computer? Now, the financial elite, they want the gold and silver. They need it to make good on all the shortfalls for playing fast and loose with other people's gold at the Federal Reserve and all these other gold bullion centers that took people's gold being deposited there for safekeeping, and they leased it out the back I remember when this whole gold shortage issue first popped up, right about the same time we did that History Channel show. And the financial press, CNBC, actually came out with an editorial saying it doesn't matter if the gold isn't really there in the vaults. As long as we have a paper entry, everything is okay. No, it isn't okay. When you buy a car, you want the car. You can't drive to work on the sales receipt, can you? It's amazing. Italy has now summoned the U.S. envoy, the ambassador to Rome, over more recent revelations of the NSA spying on the Italian government and Italian citizens and Italian businesses. Now, the main issue is the NSA tapped the telephones of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi and his aides in 2011. Now, I will concede if you are a head of state, you should expect to be spied on by all the other countries. That just sort of goes with the territory, especially in wartime. That's a given. The issue of the NSA spying on ordinary law-abiding citizens is all about a war on our privacy, to scare us into silence. The spying on businesses is all about stealing business secrets for personal profit. That's a criminal activity, and it doesn't matter if somebody that's doing it works for the government or not. It's still a crime, and it should be prosecutable. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I was watching on Fox News where they've got Comey is testifying before the House committee about encryption and the FBI against Apple. And they're signaling what the agenda really is. A ban on strong encryption. Because of the long-term threat to our national security from terrorists and criminals. Terrorists and criminals are going to write their own encryption. That's just absolutely a fact. We proved how easy it is to do. And here's the issue. If we are all forced to use government-approved encryption that is intentionally weak or backdoored, sooner or later, the real criminals find it and steal our money and our everything else. Is the government going to protect us from the cyber criminals? They haven't yet, have they? So what Comey and his anti-privacy, anti-security, anti-encryption people are really asking you to do is to just leave your doors unlocked and your wallets open to be plundered at will by anybody who feels they want to, in exchange for a promise that you will be protected from acts of terror, a promise that cannot be kept when you realize that all the acts of terror are government-sanctioned hoaxes and false flags. And on that very topic of hoaxes and false flag, interesting little article from Gilad Atzmon's website. We've had him on the show. World-class musician, and he's a peace activist. And he's responding to this article that came out the other day about this Jewish teacher who claimed he was attacked by ISIS, has been arrested by the French police for making the story up. And as it turns out, this is a repeating pattern. Because there was this other teacher who did exactly the same thing back in, November, 3-month investigation. December, another pro-Israel teacher was taken into custody after saying he was attacked by an ISIS aggressor. Stefan Arul was apparently accused of trying to spread hatred against Muslims by fabricating the stabbing. There was another case where another teacher sparked a full-on terror alert, saying there was a man in a balaclava with a box cutter and scissors, and he'd come into the school. That was a hoax as well. And Gilad Atzmon is pointing out how all of these stories were originally seized on to sell the idea that there's a rampant surge of anti-Semitism in Europe, when, justifying the French clampdown on criticisms of Israel. But all these stories turned out to be fake. There isn't really a surge in anti-Semitism. There's a surge in anti-Semitic hoax crimes. That's what's going on here. To get people to go along with this idea that we're going to stop anti-Semitism by silencing critics of the government of Israel. Because that's Israel's only card they can play to divert world criticism from what they have been doing. By denouncing any criticism of their actions as a government as hatred of the Jewish people, which is kind of like trying to dismiss criticism of the Nazis by saying you just hate the German people. And in that context, you see how silly this all is. And how long they've gotten away with it. All right, we've got a caller waiting on the line, but I don't have a name or anything. We'll wait for Tom to find out who that is waiting to talk to us. 6 states are getting ready to sue the Obama administration over the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. Texas, Wisconsin, Kansas, Louisiana, Indiana, and Nebraska have taken issue with the health insurance provider's fee that is assessed on health insurers to cover the federal subsidies. Obamacare was sold with, we're going to give you money for your health care. And actually, no, they pretty much haven't. But they assess a fee on the health insurers. And for the state-operated exchanges, they're saying that was never part of the deal. There's nothing in the original language of the Affordable Care Act that says states also have to pay that fee. And so they're suing. And the reality is that Obamacare continues to be a disaster. Right now, in our presidential race, of the 7 main candidates running for president, only one wants to keep Obamacare. And that's Hillary Clinton. There's a good reason not to vote for her. Everyone else is promising to get rid of it. It's been a disaster, both for its overt purpose of providing affordable health care to Americans and its covert purpose of generating more tax revenues for a desperately broke federal government. All right, we're going to grab a phone call here. Clint in Nevada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing? Okay, there's a couple stories I see here on Google. Just type in the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and the Attorney General Lynch, she had been in front of Congress, and she confirmed that that Justice Department lawyers, career ones, nonpartisan supposedly, they're working with the FBI now, which confirms that it is a criminal investigation now.
Or a unified cover-up. I still will not be at all surprised if after all this we're investigating, we've got the Justice Department, everybody's looking, and they're going to say, well, you know, it looked really suspicious, but when we got right down to it, we didn't actually find that Hillary did anything wrong. I'm smelling that kind of a setup. Because, again, I'm going back on my encounter with the Clintons and the FBI all those years ago over the Vince Foster affair. And if the FBI was covering up for the Clintons' crimes back then, they're probably doing it again today, if for no other reason that Hillary has threatened to, blow the whistle on all that's been going on for the last 2 decades in this country, which would be a serious embarrassment for the FBI.
Be hard to do it in jail, though.
Yeah, they are. They are. Isn't it? What a strange country we have. We have so many people in jail who don't deserve to be there, and so many people who deserve to be in jail who will never see the inside of a cell block.
Right. There's another one, too. John Kerry, now he's been in front of Congress, and I guess under oath said that he had no idea that he was getting email from a private server. I guess saying, well, how many times do you look at somebody's email address? Maybe he's not that technically. But anyways, no, I think I give it a 50-50 now, Mike, because that she's going to go down because the timing of how this stuff's coming out, the way this thing has grown, the internet, the blogs. We're pushing this now. If they could have swept it under the rug, they would have done it already.
They had it under the rug. That's the problem. We ripped the rug off. Got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much for the phone call, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And just another comment about this whole email situation. Hillary is already confirmed to have committed major security violations, far greater than those that resulted in Petraeus having to step down. We have that one email in which Hillary is instructing her subordinate to remove the classification headings from a classified document so it can be sent by a non-secure channel. It doesn't matter what's on that document. The classification headings say it's classified. Removing the classification headings from a classified document is a felony under Title 18. On that alone, she should be arrested. The fact that she's not tells us that this is going to be another government whitewash. We've got this huge dog and pony show, this pageant, this theater event by the FBI and the Department of Justice going around saying, we're looking into this very seriously. We're turning over the trash cans and we're looking into all the drawers. And then somewhere down the road they're going to say, well, it looked really suspicious, but your government, your FBI and your Department of Justice, we've looked really hard and you can take our word for it. Hillary did nothing actually wrong. So vote for Hillary. Blah, 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 blah. I think that's what's coming. I think that's what they're going to do. Nobody's going to believe it, of course. But the Clintons are untouchables. They know where all the dead bodies are buried. They know how they got to be dead bodies. I think it was 2 weeks ago we were hearing reports that Hillary was literally telling the power elite that if she was kept from the White House, she would just go ahead and blow the whistle on everything. The guns, the drugs, the money laundering by the CIA through all those failed savings and loans, all of it. She may actually be in as great a risk as Donald Trump, because in her own way, she is a serious threat to the establishment. All right, let's grab ourselves a phone call. George in Montana, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I have a question about the anti-Obamacare candidates and what they intend to do for people that are going to be in my category. I'll be 60 next month, and if you're between 60 and 65 and you had to buy a health care policy off of the Obamacare system, it's exorbitant. It's probably about 4 digits. So
and it's got a sky-high deductible. So for most people, you're going to be paying your own medical costs anyway, even with the insurance.
But what are their plans? Because you're going to wind up with massive amounts of people like myself or in my age category that would be uninsured. Fortunately, I can afford it. But most people can't. If you're just approaching Medicare, the costs of a private policy are just through the roof. So if they pull it away, what are their alternative plans? What is Trump going to do if he takes that away?
Well, supply and demand comes into play here, because the big feature of Obamacare was we were all forced to buy health insurance policies, and we knew that was going to send the prices up because of what happened when auto insurance became mandatory. Now, if you take away Obamacare and health insurance policies have to be attractive to be bought by consumers, you're going to see the prices go down and the service go up again. So that's...
But not for that age category. That will go up anyway. That's the problem with that age bracket. It's going to go through the roof even when free markets take over the price.
Well, I disagree, because, again, for people who are in that age bracket, they're looking at their policies and saying, I'm paying a huge amount for the health insurance policy. Because of the deductible, I'm getting no benefit. I'm just going to cancel the policy. And so you're going to see the companies that sell to that age group are going to see their sales and revenue go down unless they start making those policies more attractive.
Mike, I've got a policy right now. It's a Blue Cross policy. I pay $90 a month, and I've got a max $600 per year out of pocket. Now, how is the free market going to match that? They're going to have to
That's an amazing policy, by the way. That's certainly way out of. You've got a really sweet deal there compared to the rest of the country here. But again, once it's no longer mandatory that you have an insurance policy, insurers are going to have to make their policies attractive across all of these demographics, or they're going to be losing business. Most of them lost business anyway. People were canceling their policies and just accepting the IRS penalties because they just could not afford it. Okay?
I think they're going to have to lower the Medicare age by 5 years in order to tackle this problem, because most people in this country are not healthy enough after the age of 60.
Well, speak for yourself there, fella.
Well, hey, Mike, I work out 3 hours a day, and I still fight full contact in the ring, martial arts.
Okay, well, no wonder you got your policy for only $90. Okay. Anyway, listen, I got to let you go. We got a bunch of stuff to cover. We're running out of time here. No, when market forces return to the market, it's going to work better for the people. Anytime government comes out and says, you will buy car insurance, you will buy health insurance, you will buy vaccines, you will buy GMO, it's always a disaster for the people. And I'm absolutely in agreement with all those candidates, except Hillary. It's time for Obamacare to go. It was a complete, utter disaster. It was just ripping off the American people. Another way to rip off the American people. And it's a failure. That's why Obama is still going to try and get his carbon tax through. That's why you're not seeing national TV coverage of the very heavy snowstorm that just hit the central states. People are sending me pictures. It's amazing what's going on out there. All righty, we're going to get on to some other things here. We've been hearing about Obama's potential replacements for Judge Scalia. Loretta Lynch is being floated as a possible contender. Apparently, Governor Brian Sandoval is under consideration by Obama to be the new Supreme Court Justice. Now, remember, we're heading in for a major fight there because the Senate GOP is simply saying, we're not going to even hold a confirmation hearing. But again, that leaves Obama the option of a recess appointment, which would be valid until Obama himself is out of office. So he's probably going to wind up doing that. Now, here's an interesting story. This is out of Judicial Watch, and these are good people. You need to pay attention to Judicial Watch and what they're doing. They're at the forefront of getting to the truth behind Hillary's email server. And now they've come on out with an analysis of President Obama's 2008 victory. According to an in-depth academic study conducted independently, it's confirming Judicial Watch's assessment that Obama's victory in 2008 was based on illegal voters, foreign nationals, undocumented workers, whatever you want to call them, who consistently vote Democratic because they're going to get goodies for free, and they voted Obama in. Now, here's where it gets interesting. It is against the law for illegals to vote in U.S. elections. You have to be a citizen. You have to not have a felony record. So if Obama's election was a fraud, remember what I said at the top of the show? The courts rule consistently, fraud negates consent. If Obama's 2008 election was fraudulent, then we're all off the hook. We don't owe that huge increase in the national debt that Obama has created. We're not obliged to buy his Obamacare policies. We're not obliged to sacrifice life and limb of our children in all of his wars. He's not a real president. Remember what I said before. If a government cannot prove the accuracy, honesty, and legality and fairness of the elections by which they claim authority over us, then we're not obligated to listen to them, obey them, pay their bills, or sacrifice the lives of our children for them. They're not a legal, legitimate government. The burden of proof is on them, especially after the videos coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of the program today on this Thursday. And the gun grabbers are coming. The gun grabbers are coming. And for those of you with a sense of irony, you're going to love this story. Lexington, Massachusetts. You probably heard the name because back on April 19th, 1775, Patriots' Day, the British Redcoats, on a mission to seize the firearms of the colonists, met their first opposition on Lexington Green, sparking the battles of Lexington and Concord, which the Redcoats lost, and kicking the American Revolution into high gear. Today, almost 240 years later, and Lexington is considering a ban on all semi-automatic guns of any kind. If it auto-loads, it's gone. Now, down in Atlanta, Georgia, they have a little more common sense. First of all, you probably remember the story from some years ago about how Kennesaw, Georgia, literally passed an ordinance saying all homes had to have a gun, and crime dropped by 90%. Well, apparently, there is this aviation insurance company that now requires all of its employees, including the women, to get certified for concealed carry. And the owner of the company has made a gift to all of his employees who get their certification of a .410 Judge pistol. This is a revolver. It fires the 4-ton shotgun shells. It's sort of like a hand shotgun, 5 rounds. It's called a hand cannon. Very, very powerful weapon. And I will bet you once word gets out that that company and those employees will not have a problem with crime the way people living up in Chicago do. Now, over in Louisiana, Representative Barry Ivy of Baton Rouge is introducing a bill for constitutional carry in Louisiana. So we can expect a staged mass shooting to try and get the gun grabber agenda back on track. Did you notice they didn't get a lot of traction off of Kalamazoo? They've done so many of these shootings and everything, it's lost its shock value. They've burned it out. And people are, they're not letting their emotions get in the way there. They're saying, well, look, if all these criminals have guns, especially getting the guns from Fast and Furious, we paid for the drug criminals' guns. Why can't we spend our money on guns for ourselves? It doesn't make any sense. We have a government that is giving these military-style weapons to Mexican drug criminals at your expense, but doesn't want you to have them. Whose side is the government on? The American people or the drug lords? And that's a legitimate question when you go back and look at heroin smuggling from Vietnam, Iran-Contra, cocaine smuggling. The biggest drug smuggler in the country is the country. Now, there's a guy out there by the name of Bo Greitz, and he did a video, and I think it's now a DVD, called A Nation Betrayed. And he just lays it all out, how the U.S. government has been entangled with drug smuggling all along. Air America out of Vietnam, Iran-Contra, you mentioned that one. We all know what's going on. The war on drugs is actually the war on the competition's drugs. We have a government corrupted by drug money. And they really got in control back during the presidency of Bill Clinton. Now, over in Virginia, there is a bill being proposed there that is drawing tremendous condemnation from civil rights groups. This bill is going to create a Virginia state secret police force whose officers would be effectively immunized from wrongdoing. It wouldn't matter what they did, they would not be subject to arrest and prosecution. Kick down the wrong door, gun down a family, nothing happens. Run a bus full of nuns off the edge of the road, nope, can't touch them, they're the secret police. Senate Bill 552. And the bill also has a provision that the identity of police officers is now classified. No more name tags, no more numbers on the badges. That's definitely the sign of a new Gestapo. Haven't you ever noticed any time there's, the shock troops keeping the people, the faces are masked. They don't want you hunting down these people. Back when the United States was still a republic with democratic elections, and the police knew what their job was to protect and to serve, you have the name tags, you have the badge numbers. If a cop did something wrong, you knew who it was. In Virginia, they want to take that away. The police are nameless, faceless, you're not allowed to know who they are. And under this bill, you would not even be allowed to bring them into court. That's how dangerous it's getting. Interesting little story. This is out of WakingTimes.com. A study conducted by researchers led by Kathleen Corriveau of Boston University has examined how exposure to religion as a child impacts the ability of the adult to distinguish reality from fantasy. Not surprisingly, very strong correlation, which makes sense because telling little kids that women are made from ribs and that snakes talk, apple trees are magic, and so forth, is going to mess up their minds a little bit. And they grow up entrapped by belief in things that are nonsensical, and they can be made to believe other nonsensical things, like vaccines are safe and GMOs are good for you, and the wars are just and moral, and Saddam had nuclear weapons. See, that's why you're taught to believe. You're brainwashed at a young age into letting beliefs control your mind. You get bribes for it. Believe in the fat man at the North Pole, you get a bicycle. Believe in the magic rabbit, you get candy. We're coming up on that one. Don't think, don't question, don't analyze. Just believe, and good things will happen. And you grow up allowing beliefs to control your mind. And that makes it easier for those who control the beliefs to control you. And that's why I've said all along, beliefs are chains used to hold free minds enslaved. No chains of steel ever bound a human being tighter than the chains made of the beliefs with which we are indoctrinated as children. They grab you when you're young. Kindergarten, Sunday school, they feed you those beliefs when you're too young to understand that big people can be full of it. And as you grow older, your personality evolves around those core beliefs, and you become what is believed in. I am a Republican. I am a Christian. I am the thing I was taught to believe. And that's part of the enslavement process. It's part of the brainwashing. You see very few people going on out there and saying, well, I support the platform of the Republican Party. No, I am a Republican. I am the thing. And this explains why you have people supporting Hillary Clinton who know that she has committed all of these horrible crimes. They don't care. They believe in Miss Hillary. They believe it's time for a woman president. If there is one thing I would like to leave to the world for all the years I put into all of this stuff, it's the idea that belief is a bad thing, that it's a tool used against you to control you, that you should never allow belief control over your mind, your thought processes. Beliefs are always used to somebody else's purpose. Nobody gives you something to believe for your own benefit. It's always for somebody else's benefit. The guys with the collection plates, the guys with the election placards, the guys with the needles in their hands. Beliefs are a bad thing. All beliefs are a bad thing. Get the facts. Think it through, logically, rationally. Never allow belief to color your view of the world. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, here on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, stay skeptical. Make good choices. Share what you know with everybody that you know. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, with the Lady Claire. Aloha, America.